Welcome back, guys. Got another video for you here where we're going to ask the important question, namely, D&D movie, are you okay? But before we get into that, of course, please, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Please click the subscribe button and the bell icon for notifications. Guys, we are about 52 subs away from 4,000, and the significance of that is 4,000 is a really keen number. So thank you all very much for your support. And speaking of support, of course, this video is brought to you by our friends at Hellebarde Games. Hellebarde publishes the modules that they'd like to play. Whether it's for OSR, Castles and Crusades, or 5th edition, old school rules are in play at the table. And of course, you can pick their products up at DriveThruRPG or on their website, hellebardegames.com. That's Hellebarde Games. So with that said, got some interesting news, interesting information about the upcoming Dungeons & Dragons movie, Honor Amongst Thieves. Honor Among Thieves. We wouldn't want to put the ST on there and confuse anyone. And this is, I got to tell you guys, my read on this is that this is fansplaining, just like we were getting from the people responsible for the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power travesty over on Amazon. But let's take a look at it together. And of course, you guys tell me what you think down in the comments below after we take a crack at this. Now, this comes to us from Screen Rant. So let's jump into it. Dungeons & Dragons movies, divisive lore change explained by directors. And we got Pete Davidson after a bender there. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's just a joke. Following some backlash from tabletop players, directors Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly are explaining their decision behind Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, divisive lore change. The upcoming film, led by an ensemble cast that includes Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez, among others, centers on a misfit group of thieves as they seek to save the world from a powerful entity after delivering them a dangerous artifact. I'm sorry, guys. I thought I was reading the plot summary to Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. It seems I got this mixed up with a plot summary from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. Or maybe that was the point. Anyway, set in the Forgotten Realms campaign, and that's important. We're going to come back to that in just a second. Anticipation has grown for Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves' faithfulness to its source material, though one aspect has sparked some debate. Trust me, this ain't the only aspect that's sparking debate. While looking at the film's depiction of an owlbear, the directors acknowledged the backlash from players of the iconic tabletop game. Goldstein would go on to explain the divisive lore change, recalling it to be an extensive talking point during the writing process, and that they were keen on delivering the most exciting Dungeons & Dragons adaptation possible. Folks, I'm just going to stop this article right here. I've known people who've written stuff for Hollywood. I've read books by people who've written stuff for Hollywood. Guys, what writers want, it's never divisive. There's no division because they're just plowed over. Okay? Let us move on. See what Goldstein said in the video above and quotes below. And I'll give you guys a link to the Screen Rant article. You can check it out yourself. We're aware that there was a certain amount of controversy that emerged in the D&D fan community after the first trailer showed our druid wild shaping into an owlbear, and it was something we discussed a great deal while we were writing it. We know that technically it's not permissible, but we subscribe to the rule of cool, and we felt that we, as dungeon masters of this movie, don't pander. Don't patronize us. Would let our players do this then why should we deprive the audience of something as cool and as exciting as this? Because it craps all over the game lore. And now we get Screen Rant throwing in with them and bringing even more fansplaining. How D&D lore changes could actually help the movie. Shut up, fanboy. You'll accept this and like it. Given the massive failure that was the original Dungeons & Dragons movie, and that's the first Dungeons & Dragons movie from 1999, not original Dungeons. There's never been an original Dungeons & Dragons movie. Although some might argue that that was Mazes and Monsters, but that's for another video. It is understandable that longtime players of the tabletop game would be critical of any major lore changes made for the new film. However, though Goldstein and Daly may have tweaked a few lore elements for Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, their latest comments at least offer a reasonable explanation for doing so, clearly eager to satisfy both longtime fans and newcomers to the fold, by which they mean clearly eager to satisfy the investors and studio execs who need this movie to make $435 million minimum. Considering the sheer extent of lore that exists across Dungeons & Dragons' near 50-year lifetime, there's already a risk of alienating those unfamiliar with the game by remaining strict to it. And I can't even get through that without laughing, guys, okay? I've had people who have never played Dungeons & Dragons before sit down and fall in love with it. There was no alienation. There was just a desire to learn more. Okay? Now, for all the things that Peter Jackson left out of The Lord of the Rings, and I'm not fond of that at all, there's a lot of stuff in there that a studio exec might have looked at and said, well, this is just going to confuse people. Why do we have this in here? This doesn't make any sense. This is just going to confuse people. Can't we take this out? But in a lot of important areas, he stuck to his guns, and I guarantee you it made more Lord of the Rings fans than it drove away. And folks, Dungeons & Dragons is a hell of a lot less burdensome on the intellect than reading The Lord of the Rings. But let's go on. Another reasonable reason for the lore changes in Dungeons & Dragons is the practical answer of wanting to ensure the story and action remains cool for all audiences watching in the theater. See, rule of cool, guys. The rule of cool is more important. Unless one is a hardcore player with a strict devotion to the rule set, most Dungeons & Dragons campaigns will see their dungeon masters bend to the rules, whether it be for brevity's sake or for the sheer interest of keeping their players engaged. If you can't keep your players engaged, it's not the fault of this maybe for a streaming rental movie, okay? Step your game up and don't let Screen Rant and these power book wielding hacks tell you otherwise. Additionally, with a variety of exciting campaigns available to play, it seems almost too restrictive for players to not allow some crossover or variances in their games. Even if there are disagreements surrounding Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves lore changes, it's hard to deny the larger devotion to the source material Goldstein and Daly have. I'll deny it right here. I'll deny it right here on this show. Between its central location of Neverwinter to its main antagonist being the iconic Zast Ham, the directing duo looked to be finding the right path between original storytelling and faithful adaptation. No. Now, look, I'm a classicist, okay? First edition, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, World of Greyhawk. But I know a lot of people who are just as diehard, just as white-knuckle about 1E AD&D as me, but their jam is Forgotten Realms. All right? They are going right in and tearing up Forgotten Realms lore. Because rule of cool. And to quote the man, that's crap, brothers and sisters and whatever. It's crap. It's an excuse for them to take a generic, frankly, in all likelihood, boring fantasy movie that is a thin veneer spread over the framework of Guardians of the Galaxy in an attempt to grab the cash of D&D players. And it couldn't come at a worse time on the heels of Wizards of the Coast perfidy back in January. But as always, you guys let me know down in the comments, all right? I think they're setting up for more than just this. If they're coming out right now saying, this is slightly controversial, you better believe there's going to be some lore destruction going on in this movie. But again, please leave your comments down below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Click the subscribe button and the bell icon if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys later this evening. We'll be doing the Monday night live stream. We're going to finish up our Let's Read of The Lost City and then talk about all the stuff we've got coming on this week. So you guys have an absolutely wonderful afternoon. Peace, and save your pennies for a better movie.